back. As usual, we've got our little very professional handhold movie things around. So if this is the first time you're watching a thing with me, really sorry, I haven't got a big fancy schmancy camera. It's just me and my hand and my phone and my block. So today we are doing block 2. Block 2. As I did that, I thought, oh my goodness, my triangles are in the wrong direction. Now, the important thing to remember about this is you have to make them in the right direction. It's really, 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 really easy to mess it up. Ask me how I know. Even though I wrote the pattern, ask me how I know. So anybody who has bought my pattern, you will see we're on page 7. We are now going to go through and do our half square triangles. And I, as always, suggest that you lay your block out in the correct order. So on page 9, you will see the correct order there. And this is when I lay it up and show that I've done it wrong. And I haven't. I'm just showing it to you this way wrong. So you can see all the triangles go in the same direction. Told you, very unprofessional. And per the picture, you can see they're all going in the same direction. Okay, it's really important that we get this right. So you're going green, blue, pink, purple. Blue, pink, purple, pink. Pink, purple, pink, blue. Purple, pink, blue, green. It's really important you get that order right. It's in the pictures on page 7, page 9. And as you can tell, I have already made the block, so I have not laid my fabric out as I normally do, because when you've got 32 little pieces like this, the chances of getting it all wrong and in the wrong order and mixing it up are strong. So we don't do that. All I'm doing here is I've got my colors, I've got my backgrounds, and all I'm going to do is sew them right sides together. Now, one thing to always remember with a half square triangle, this is on the warp, this is on the weft. It might be this is the weft and that's the warp, but the straight lines you've cut against the fabric with the grain of the fabric, so you're not going to have very much bias on here. Gently, if you apply some pressure on that, they don't really move. However, when you cut across the warp and the weft, you get something here called bias edges. And if I pull that, you can see, I'm not going to pull it too much, you can see it's a lot more movable than this. And the reason that's important is when you put this through the sewing machine, you've got to be really, really careful not to stretch this. Otherwise, what happens is that your outer edges are perfect, and in the middle you've got to, and when you put, sorry, that was really descriptive, apologies. So you get this wonderful extension in the middle, which means your half square triangle isn't actually a square because you've got that little wafty bit in the middle and it's not what you want. So my suggestion is, again, I warned you, my camera hand, what I suggest is I always just really simply take my background fabric and I line this up perfectly. You can see that's lined up beautifully all the way around. And my rule of thumb is I always have my colored fabric at the top, my pattern fabric at the top and the background at the bottom. And then I lay this down with my 1/4 inch seam. Now I'm really adept with a 1/4 inch. And the only reason I go back and forth is sometimes when I use my thread cutter, my machine has a habit of losing the thread at the very beginning. So you do not have to do a back and forth on that. That's just a me machine thing. So you can tell here, I'm not touching this. I literally just put my finger on here to make sure that I'm guiding. I'm not touching it at all, just to make sure that I'm guiding this piece of this half square triangle on the 1/4 inch seam, and I just let that go. I let the machine do the work. The tension on most machines, my tension, the top tension for the pressure foot is adjusted here. So I'm confident with my pressure here and my machine that just letting it go through like that, the half square triangle won't get distorted. And then literally you just make your 16 half square triangles all the way through really simply, and you go as fast as you dare. My needle is always down when a stitch is finished. So for me, I feel very comfortable speeding it up when I go through my stitching process. I do find lining these up perfectly does take that little bit of extra time. but it does make your life a lot easier when you come to sewing them all together. Okay. The other thing to remember when you make this block, you end up with a really wonderful, if you just like this design and this block, when you put these together, it does make a really interesting, you can see there, really interesting pattern. So if you do make this block, make sure you have a little look when you've made all 4 of them, and you can put them together and you can see just how interesting they do look together. If you have got a situation where your triangles are not identical in size, like this one is ever so slightly different, you can see it's just 1 or 2 threads there. Split the difference, so just align it up so you've got the gap equal on both sides. Over here it matches perfectly, so I'm not too worried about that one, because what will happen is on the sides, the seam allowance will take that in. And if you are a little bit out on your, now we've done the purple, we're now starting on the pink. If your seam allowances are ever so slightly out, what will happen is when you come to put the quilt together, you may end up just ever so slightly missing a point where your triangles meet. But I'm okay with missing a point every now and then. So you can see we've now started on the pink. The key here is making sure you are consistent. So making sure that you've got the same 1/4 inch all the way along will make your life a lot easier when you come to line these all up and put the block together. So when you finish blocks 1 and 2, you've then made 8 of the 9 blocks, so you're pretty far into making this quilt. The fabric that I've decided to use is, oh my goodness, I may not have enough squares. That's interesting. I might just be jumping the gun. The fabric I've decided to use here for my background fabric is I've used a black dimples. And the other fabric I've chosen to use is from Alison Glass's Between collection. That is this blue, this tealy color here. Oh, this teal color. And the pink color is from her anniversary collection, if I'm not mistaken. But I think this quilt itself really lends itself to making sure that you use your scraps, use your stash, and being able to just use up the fabric you have. I do have enough squares, triangles. Now, while this has been happening, I've made sure that my iron is heating up quietly on the other side. And what I'm going to do is once I've finished sewing these together, I'm going to then press all of my half square triangles at the same time and get those into my squares. And then I'm going to lay everything out in the order it needs to be. At this point, it's a good idea to double check that your bobbin hasn't run out. Ask me how I know, because there's nothing worse than having sewn together so many half square triangles, especially if you're doing all 4 blocks at once, and then by doing that, you've run out of bobbin halfway through and you have to re-sew them all. Because as you can tell, lining these up takes a little bit of time. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 units with the teal. I've got 2 units with the green. I can't remember the figure numbers in the pattern, but you will see that when you go through the pattern. This is on page 7 of the pattern now. 4, 5, and I've got 6 of the pink, and then I've got 4 of the purple. Okay, so we are now well on our way of doing this. So if we flick back a page, 2 pages, we're on page 7. So I've made 4 of the purple, 6 of the pink, 4 of the blue, and 2 of the green. So I've made figures 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4. And now we're flicking over to this once we've pressed everything. So I will now hopefully not knock you over as I pivot around. Please excuse the pile of scraps on the floor underneath it. I am now going to, I always set my seam first, and I'm going to try and press towards the dark side, and I did that the wrong way around, sorry. I try and press towards the dark side. I think it makes life a little easier. And you can also then use that age-old adage of press to the dark side. Okay. Perfect. And then we switch these all over. So I'm going there and press to the dark. I'm not pulling the black, I'm just gently holding it while the nose of the iron goes along the seam and presses everything down. So set my seam and I just lean that back, use the nose of the iron and do that and hold that down. So we've now done a quarter of the pressing of these half square triangles. That's our 4th purple. I do at this point make sure that I keep everything in color order. So I've got all my purples there and now doing my pinks. Just having these little piles makes your life that little easier when you're coming to lay it all out on the block. I'm going to stand to do this. I think it does make your life a little easier when you're a little higher than your fabric. This has got a bit twisted, so if that happens, I just flick it over and we're back on the run. Now, many people do press their half square triangles. They press the seams open, or they press it to the other side. Whatever works for you, there's no right or wrong. You're the one who's got to work with the fabric, so you do what works best for you. Okay. So there we go. We've now done 10 of the 16. That's 6 pink and 4 purple. That's 10 of them done. We're now going to do our 2 green. And I press those the wrong way around to start with. So there's our first green and our second green. And now we're on to our blues, the last 4 that need doing. So the majority of the work on this block is now done because you've done all the pressing on this. This is the longest part of the exercise. You are making 4 of these blocks. So when you are doing this, just remember you've got 4 to make in total. And now you go and you lay these out in the color order you need to do. And I'll rotate you back over here. Okay, move that up a bit. So what I've got here is I'm going to leave this in the corner over there. I'm going to lay out my green first because I know my green is in the corner. Keep your fabrics in order. So I know that my green is pointing in. My green is pointing in this way and it's pointing out on the bottom corner over there. So if you start in the bottom corner, you've got your green there and then you've got 2 blues on either side. And you can see the colors are all pointing in the same direction. Then you've got 3 pinks. 1, 2, 3. And then you've got your purples. You've got 4 purples. So you've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'll just move that out of the way. Okay, now we are back to our pink. So we've got 1, 2, 3. And then last but not least, we've got our 2 blues over there. I know you can just see the green in that top right-hand corner, popping its little head out on the side. So you can see that's how we're doing it. Now, in the pattern, I tell you to do these rows, row by row, as you go along. You may find a different way of doing it that you prefer. One thing I have found a little easier, and I'm going to lift that up a little bit so you can actually see my face. Oh, isn't live feeding fun? What I did find a little easier was doing 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, because I like to feed it through. So when I did the groups of 2, I did it that way, and then I put them back in this order. And luckily, I've got one already made up, so you can double check this back. So putting that there, you can see that's the right order. So that makes your life that little bit easier having the reference to that. So I'm going to carry on doing it the way that I've suggested now. The pattern says to do 4 at a time. Whatever works for you. Maybe we'll do half and half. Actually, that's a good idea. Let's do half and half. So this is the first 2 blocks here. It is important to make sure that you are keeping them in the same order. So there to there. And then you take it to your sewing machine. And as you make the block, you'll find your way of doing it that works best for you. So, but I do strongly advise you to put it all back into position before you sew the next bit together, okay? So you can see it's green, blue, pink, purple. So that is figure 2.8. So I can see that works. So now all I do is I put those 2 together. Okay. And you got your first row. A quarter of the block is done. Again, the only reason I went backwards is my thread sometimes unthreads. So there we go. That is the 4th row. I'm going to do exactly the same method over here. This is now 2.7. We're doing the 3rd row. And you can start top to bottom. It doesn't matter which way around you do this. You're going to end up with the same result regardless. Now, many observant sewers will notice I have not clipped the ends off there. If at this point you want to, by all means, you clip away, whatever works best for you. Make sure that before you do actually sew these into rows, you do put it back to check A, that they're going in the right direction, B, you've kept the pattern and the design the same way, and it is very easy with this many pieces to get it mixed up. So for me, it works really well having that. If you weren't here, I would have this in front of me like this so that I can double check. That's row 4, that's row 4, and I would actually physically take it and put it on top. And that's row 3. It just works for me. I know it's a, I just like checking. I don't like unpicking and just making sure that it works. Now again, when you put these together, they should line up perfectly. If you have got a little bit sticking out, like we have in the previous sections, split the difference. It's not going to cause that much of a problem. It's just a case of if it happens, just split the difference. And, oh, sorry, I thought I'd lost my thread then. And my row 3 is the same. You can see my row 3 is the row 3. So this is why I do it that way, and it just makes my life that little... I just feel confident knowing that that is the correct way. Now I rotate this down, and I've got my row 2 at the top here, which is my row 2. I put that there, and I check I've got blue, I've got pink, I've got purple, I've got pink, all in the correct order. And then I leave this here in front of my sewing machine, ready to go. So I know that when I put these 2 together, I know they're the right way round. And I just sew down that side there. And it does become easier. Once you've done a row or 2, you totally and utterly understand the process really easily. But before you carry on, always put it back into position just to double check you've got it going the right way round. And I put that there. I take my row 2 over to it. Blue, pink, purple, pink. That is correct. And I then sew those together. So I've got another row ready to go. So now we've done 3/4 of the block now in the rows. In 6 more seams, we finished a block. So there we go. That's row 4, row 3, row 2. So this is 2.8, 2.7, and 2.6. And now we're just sewing the last 2 couples together. And our last one over here. So like I did previously, I double check with my already made block to check that I've got this correct. So I lay this back into position and I am correct. I've got purple, pink, blue, green. Purple, pink, blue, green. And then I just sew these 2 together. Alrighty. So I think that shows you quite easily how to... Oh, almost lost my thread there. Sorry about that. So I think that shows you very easily how to put the rows together now, to make the rows individually. And you can tell we have got this in the correct order. We're now going to go back to the iron because I think when we do this, I did like the nesting technique to do this. And you'll see... Oh, I can show you here. So you can see what I did is one went one way, one went the other way. And I just found that when I did the seams pressed that way, and then on this one, the seams pressed the other way. So this is going from my right to my left, and then the other ones were going from my left to my right. I found that when I put those blocks together, they nested beautifully, and it worked very, very well. So now let's try and see if we can do that again. So what I'm going to do is the bottom block, I'm going to press from left, which is the side, to right, and I'm just going to gently, and I'm not applying too much pressure, I pop my iron over here and I gently give a little bit of pressure on this, not a lot, because you do not want to stretch and distort this, and just allow your iron, and I'm just giving it a support, I'm not pulling it, and I just allow my iron to go over and to do that. Now I know, having done this a few times, that my 4th row and my 2nd row are going to be pressed in the same direction. So what I'm going to do is, against convention, this is my 4th row, 2.8. I'm going to press 2.8, and then I'm going to take my 2nd row, and I'm going to press, pressing towards this, and I'm going to press them to get the same way at the same time. So this is now row 2, and the only reason I'm doing that is just because I find it easier pressing them in the same direction at the same time. I know that's probably not how most people would do it, but that is how I do it, and it works for me. You must do it how you choose. So this is row 2, and the row I did before that was row 4, and those are now pressed in completely the same direction. I'm just double checking I'm doing this right, and I am. And now what I'm going to do, this is row 3 or 2.7, and all I'm doing now is pressing this along the way, and I'm pressing it in the opposite direction of the one I've just done. And I think it just shows you, it's an easy way of nesting your seams when you come to do this block. You don't have to do it this way. You can do it however you choose. Again, if you want to trim your dog ears over here, you're more than welcome to do it at this point, whatever works best for you. I am just looking in the live chat. I haven't had any comments or questions. So if you are watching and you have got any comments or questions, please pop them in and I will happily answer them for you. That was row 3. And now I'm going to do row 1, and I press them both in the same direction. So that's row 3. Now I'm doing row 1. Just as I did before, I'm applying my iron. I'm giving this a little bit of pressure. I'm not pulling it and distorting it. Just a little bit of pressure. Little bit of pressure, and I'm just pulling that ever so gently just to keep it in place and to make sure that that seam doesn't twist. I'm going to take the nose of my iron and flatten that seam. and then come down here and flatten my seam as well. And there we go. Those are all my seams pressed. And now we have 3 seams left to do, and we will have a finished block. Lift that up a little bit. So we've now got row 1. So I'm going to sew rows 3 and 4 together first, and then rows 1 to 2. I'm going to line these up here. And like I showed you before, you've got those nesting seams there, which will nest in beautifully. Now, if you are able to, as you fold these back, you'll see there's a tiny little point there with the pink, and you'll see that where the fabric there. Ideally, you want that point and this point over here, where the fabric meet, to be in the exact same place. Now, you're going to get some right and you're going to get some wrong, and you're going to be kind to yourself for both. Just because you got one right doesn't mean you're awful or amazing. It just means you got one right. And if you got one wrong, it doesn't mean you're awful or amazing. It doesn't mean anything. It just means you got one wrong. So please, please, please be kind to yourself. If you get one wrong and you don't hit a point, that is okay. If you choose to use pins, by all means, go in, use your pins, line everything up beautifully, whatever works best for you. I am not here to judge your points. I am just thrilled that you are choosing to do my pattern and my design, and you're actually going to make the quilt in the first place. If there's a point out, I don't care. I am just delighted that people are making quilts, making things that they love, and that is my joy and excitement in the process. Right, I'm not even going to look at it. This is row 1 and row 2. I'm going to fold row 1 and 2 on top of each other, and because I've nested these the way that I have, I'm now going to sew along this line and get it right. I'm just checking I've done this the right way round, and I think I have. If I haven't, we will spend a few minutes unpicking. So just like before, I'm going to fold the seam over to see if I can line my points up. If I can, fantastic. If I can't, that's okay. Over here, my top seam just twisted a little bit. That was why I'm lifting my presser foot to check that all lines up, and it does, hopefully. So we've only got 1 seam left to make this block, and dum dum dum. Oh, I think I hit that one. Fingers crossed. Right, so that is 3 and 4 together, and 2 and 3 together, and that is correct by my estimation. I will take my previous block that I've already made, I will lay that out, whoops, get it the right way around, and check, but yes, that looks right to me. So we're now going to do the last seam in this block, and we're going to line that up here. Okay. Perfect. So you're going to make 4 of these blocks as well. So that'll be, when you finish this block, you would have made 8 of these, 8 of the quilt's blocks at this point. You can see as I'm going, I'm just opening this up to check if I can get the thread, the fabrics to line up and meet. If I can, fantastic. If I can't, that's okay. And over there, that meets up nicely now. And we are on the home stretch. And there we have it. We have another block 2. Now, with regards to the pressing now on this one, again, you're just going to allow the fabric to go where it wants to. You're not going to be aligning any seams up when you do this. So what I would suggest is, well, what I've done is I put my fabric like, my block like that, and I've just put my iron on it, and I just gently roll the seams over as I go along. I'm not pulling it, I'm just gently putting a little bit of tension on it. I'm not distorting it, because if you distort it at this point, there's a strong possibility your blocks won't line up, and we definitely do not want that. You just want it to be as simple and easy as possible, and just follow your fabric along and just press those seams as you go along. And you can see just by pulling it, you do get a flatter surface over there, but I am not bending or distorting the seams. You'll see as you go, you'll know when you've pulled it too tight. Your fabric will stretch and it'll be obvious that you've distorted it. Don't do that. That's not what you want. You just want a gentle bit of tension on it. And you don't need to do that technique at all. You quite literally just take your iron and go and press along the block as you go. So now we have made 8 blocks of this process. I am quite keen to actually show you all what it all looks like. What is your recommendation for a beginner? Finish 1 block at a time or do most of them? There is no right or wrong. I think you've just got to do what you're comfortable with. I think if you make 1 first, that will give you the confidence to carry on doing more, but you've got to be confident on how you do it. Just take your time with it all. You can do it. Just break it down little bit by little bit, as I have in the pattern, and have fun with it. It's meant to be good fun. So there we go. I've got 4 of those, and I've got 1 of these blocks here, and I've got 3 of these blocks of number 1 ready to go. So we've made 8 blocks. At this point, most people get a little bit despondent. So it does then, I'm going to do something which I wasn't going to do, and I'm going to take you on a little bit of a road trip at this point. We're not going far, don't worry. I'm going to take you outside and show you what this looks like now, because I think at this point, especially having made 8 blocks, you run the risk of potentially losing heart and not being able to be excited about it anymore. But I think when you do actually lay these blocks out, you end up, sorry, that's too close. I apologize, too close. When you do lay these blocks out, I think you end up with a very different reaction to what it is that you've got. So forgive the awful angles. Oh gosh, I need my pattern because I can't remember if these all point in. So if we put that there, and I know I've got a block there, which is this block. There is sashing to go in between. And then you've got this block here. We've still got the middle block to do, but I do think it's important when you get to this point that you just stop for a little breather and you just lay your quilt out, because it gives you a little bit more of an inspiration as to what it is you're making and just how special it is and how lovely it looks at this point. Forgive me, where do I turn? There we go. So I think you can see at this point that actually is really exciting. I love this colorway. I'm really enjoying the Alison Glass fabrics here. And I think you can tell that it is such a pretty fabric choice, and it's so simple and just a really lovely way of being able to highlight the fabric. And as you get closer to it, you can see the synergy of that fabric's about 2 or 3 years old, ties in with that fabric, which ties in with this fabric, which ties in with that fabric. And Alison Glass has got a wonderful eye with her designs and colours to be able to make something effortless and beautiful and wonderful. And there we go. We have now finished block 2 and block 1. We've got block 3 to sashing, and then we're going to do the quilting aspect of it. Zoe, that's very kind. Thank you, sweetheart. I hope all of you have a wonderful evening, a fantastic Christmas, because I'm filming this in, I think it's the 22nd of December, 2022. So have a fabulous Christmas, look after yourself, and if you've made a mistake, please, thanks Sally, that's very kind. If you make a mistake, please remember, you've got to be kind to yourself. You're not going to get it all right, you're not going to get it all wrong. So it's a learning curve, enjoy. And if it makes you feel any better, I have missed some of my points as well. You know, and it's fine. If anybody is under a quilt of mine, they're not going to complain about my points. And if they are, they're not your friend, and that's okay. Be kind to yourself. Have a wonderful evening. Look after yourselves. And I'll be back probably tomorrow or the next day for block 3, sashing, and then quilting. Enjoy. Have a good one. Bye.